Good afternoon. Thank you for all coming on such short notice to TPD. We are here to give you an update from this morning's incident out on 8th Avenue. And I'm not going to provide the update. I'm going to allow Deputy Chief Forseth to provide the update. Chief Michael DeLeo is out of town. He sends his regards, but he cannot speak at our press conference. So I'd like to invite Deputy Chief Forseth up to make some comments.
Thank you, Dave. I'd also like to echo Officer Northway's comments and welcome you to TPD, especially on such short notice, so thank you all for being here. We are here to provide a few details about the incident that occurred this morning at 631 West 8th Avenue. Before I begin, I would like to remind you the case is active and ongoing. Florida law limits my ability to provide further details at this time. This morning about 4:50 a.m., the Consolidated Dispatch Agency received a 911 call for assistance. The female resident stated her husband was outside in the front yard, threatening suicide, and was armed with a handgun. Two TPD officers, Officer Doug Kuchera and Officer Matthew Schmidt, went to the home and made contact with the male who was still outside, armed and threatening to shoot himself. The preliminary investigation shows that 2 shots were fired in rapid succession. 1 shot came from the officer and 1 from the male subject. Our investigators are still working to determine the order of those shots. Based upon the initial assessment of the scene, physical evidence recovered, most importantly, the recovery of the officer's bullet within a fixed object, our preliminary findings at this point is that Officer Kuchera was not responsible for the injuries to the male. It is our belief the male took his own life with a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Let me reiterate that it is our belief at this time Officer Kuchera did not injure the male at the time he fired his weapon. Upon seeing the injured male, Officer Kuchera and Schmidt immediately began administering CPR and life-saving measures. EMS was immediately called in an effort to save the man's life. Sadly, he passed away from his injuries. The deceased has been identified as white male Patrick G. Keeney, whose date of birth is 2/10/1980. As is department policy, both officers have been placed on administrative leave as the investigation continues. In closing, I would like to say that all of TPD's thoughts and prayers are with the involved families and the officers as they work through this difficult situation. Officer Northway has a copy of the officer's TPD biography that will be included in the press packet. Thank you all for coming.
I can take a few questions if there are any. Again, we would need to reiterate, though, that it is an active, ongoing investigation, which will limit me severely in what we can say.
Dave, can you just talk about, the officer's initial contact with the man, with verbal commands or anything like that that may have happened between them?
I cannot talk about the specifics of what was said between them because at this point that's still part of the investigation. I can tell you that our training teaches officers that when they're faced with a deadly force situation, meaning someone is threatening their lives or someone else's life, one of the main things that we are taught as police officers is to tell them to stop in some manner, drop the weapon, identify ourselves as police officers.
And how many shots were fired at the incident?
We believe at this time only 2 shots were fired. 1 came from the Officer Kuchera's weapon, and 1 we believe came from the Mr. Keeney's weapon.
And the bullet from the officer's gun was found?
Yes, we recovered the bullet from the officer who shot his weapon, which is Officer Kuchera, and that in no way do we believe was able to injure or could have injured Mr. Keeney.
Where was the bullet recovered?
I can't provide that information at this time due to the investigation.
There are toys and things in the yard. Were there any children home at the time of this incident?
Again, the specifics of the incident I do not have in front of me at this time.
And what's the status of the 2 officers, if you could clarify their names, please?
Officer Douglas Kuchera is the first one, and Officer Matthew Schmidt, and that is spelled S-M I'm looking down at it right now, and I'm going to provide these pieces of paper to you. SMIDT. SMIDT. And I have their biographies, meaning when they were hired, their history here, things like that of that nature for you.
And how did you spell Cochera?
Kuchera is spelled Kuchera. It's a very sad incident. We apologize for making you come out for the press conference, but we had to explain what happened.
Do you guys know that if the gun that the guy had, if it was his, registered to him or not?
Do not have any information at this time in front of me about the weapon.
Have you
We
ever
could
been-
speak offline about registering a handgun, though. That's something that we probably need to talk about in Florida.
Have you ever been called to this home previously for any incidents?
A quick check of our CAD system, our computer-aided dispatching system, shows that we were there one other time for a noise complaint, meaning a loud music type complaint, and that's all.
Has there been anything discovered about the man's state of mind before the incident?
It's a terrible and tragic incident. It's not something that we are able to comment on this time.
This morning you said it was a handgun. Can you confirm that?
Simply a weapon, a gun of some sort. I do not know the exact specifics of it.
And as part of this investigation, you all are going to come up with some sort of final resolution as to who shot first, if I heard that correctly?
We are working to determine the exact order of how things went this morning. We always work a case until the very, very end, so we will work it to its very end, and once we have that information, we can provide it to you, absolutely.
In those critical moments, do you have any information whether he pointed the gun at officers or threatened them in any way? Can you tell us any more about this critical moment?
Unfortunately, I do not have the specifics of the case, and I'm not able to give them out as we continue with our investigation.
How was the wife?
I could not speak to specifically how she was, but I can tell you that our hearts and thoughts are with her. It must be a horrific situation that she's dealing with at this time.
Has she been questioned, or is she being questioned?
She has, I mean, as anybody who would be, who made the phone call to us, we do make contact them and speak with them, yes.
Do we know if they were the only two in that residence?
I don't have specifics on who was at the residence. Okay. Thank you all very much for coming.